Good morning students, welcome to computer science class. Today here I am going to explain you about the generations of computers. What are the generations, what advantages we have in a generations and what disadvantages we have in a generation. So before going into generation, first we will discuss about computers and how it is evolved. Okay, that we'll discuss. Okay, so actually what is a computer? Computer is an electronic device. Okay, computer is an electronic device which manipulates information. Okay, it will manipulates information and whatever data available in the system. Actually, what is the use of the computer? It is used to store the data. It is used to retrieve the data. It is used to process the data. So whatever arithmetic and logical operations are there, all the operations are performed by the system, and it first whenever the user enters the information, it will store the information. Whatever instructions the user has given, that is also stored inside the system, and based on the instructions given by the user, it will process the data. Okay, and it has the ability also to modify your spreadsheet, Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, everything. Okay, but when this computer's development has started, okay, so the development of this complex system started around 1940, okay, with the first generation of computers. Okay, when this computer's development has been started around 1940 with the first generation of computers. Okay, understood? So when this computer's development has been started, 1940, around 1940. Okay, 1940 with the first generation of computers. Okay, now we'll discuss about the computers. I hope you all understood what is the use of the computer and what it will do. It is an electronic device which manipulates the information, it stores the information, it will process the information. Okay, and it has the ability to modify the documents. Okay, so now we'll discuss about the generations of computers. What is the generation of computers? Actually, the history of this computer goes back to several decades. Okay, means the development of the computer has started before the several decades. Okay, and till now we have 5 generations of computers. Okay, how many generations of computers we have? 5 generations. Okay, so and how these generations are categorized, how it is different, means how will you if you want to distinguish the different generations. Okay, it is based on the technical advancement, the technical development in that particular period. Based on that, we have 5 generations of computers. Understood, all of you? How you will distinguish the different generations? Based on the technical development, underline this point, based on the technical development, the technical advancement in that particular period. Based on that, we have 5 generations of computers. For this, I'll give you one example. We have a 1G, 2G, 3G mobiles. What is the difference? It is a technical advancement. Similarly, whatever technology used inside the system, based on that, we have different types of generations. Okay, so here for each and every generation, we have given a particular period of time. Means in that particular period of time, what technical development has been done. Based on that, we have a generations. Okay, so here how many generations we have? 5 generations we have. First generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and fifth generation. Okay, so the period of the first generation was 1946 to 1959. As I already said, the development of the system, computer has started around 1940. So this is the first generation of computer. And this is the second generation. The period is 1959 to 1965. In the third generation, 1965 to 1971. And the fourth generation, in the exam you need to write. First generation, the period of the generation. Okay, and next what the technology used in that generation. Now the fourth generation 1971 to 1980. Fifth generation 1980 onwards. Means whatever we are using now, that will come under, whatever systems you are using now, that will come under the fifth generation computers, which is based on the artificial intelligence. Okay, that we'll discuss. You take screenshot of this. In the exam as it is, you have to draw. Only for this you have a 2 marks. Okay, in the exam what is the generation you have to give? Generation here I have given like this. Okay, generations, and we have a 5 generations. Clear? Now here we have first generation of computers. Okay, first generation of computers, the period already I have given, 1946 to 1959. So the period was whatever technical advancement was there between 1946 to 1959, that will come under the first generation of computers. Next, what technology they used? Okay, means inside the computer, what technology they used to process the data is vacuum tubes. It's very important. Okay, vacuum tubes. Vacuum tubes are similar to bulbs. Okay, like this. Bulbs. Okay, but the size is very big. Okay, what technology used in the first generation of computers? Very important. Vacuum tubes, which is similar to bulbs. Okay, and which is used for the circuitry, means to process the data. Next, a magnetic drum for the memory. For example, in your mobile you are using a SD card and internal memory. Similarly, in the first generation computer, what they used as a memory? Magnetic drums they used as a memory. It will be like this. Like this. Data is stored like this. Drum. The format of that is the picture of, means the shape of that is like a drum. Only large organization, means this whatever vacuum tubes they used, the cost of the vacuum tubes were very costly. So only the big organization can afford it. Okay. Next, what language they used to write the program, to access the instructions, to perform any instruction, to store the data. What language there is? Because without language we cannot communicate with the system. In order to communicate with the system, we need a language. So in the first generation of computers, what language they used? In the first generation of computers, they used machine language. Okay, machine language. That machine language is in a zeros and ones like this. And directly, whatever instructions are there in a machine language, that is directly understood by the computer. There is no need of a further translation. Example, if you are writing anything in English, that should be converted to the machine language, because the system will understand only the machine language. Understood? The system will understand only the machine language. So whatever instructions, whatever data you want to store in the system, finally that should be converted into the machine language. So in the first generation of computers, they used the machine language. Okay. And next, what operating system? Example, in your mobile you are using iOS, Android you are using. But that time, in the first generation computers, they use batch processing operating system inside the system. Okay. It is a one type of operating system which is used to take instructions in the form of batch. Means in the set. Okay. They use batch processing operating system in the first generation of computer. When you change the generation, all these things will change. Okay. Next, punched cards and magnetic tapes are used as an input and output. Okay. Punched cards used as an input and magnetic tapes are used as an output. Punched cards like this. I think you know the punch machine. Similarly, the punched cards are used to enter the data. Punches. These are the punches. Okay, so that type of device is used as an input, and magnetic tape that will be used as was used as a output. Understood? So this is about your first generation of computers. Only the thing you need to remember is the period of the computer was 1946 to 1950. What technology they used? Magnetic drum. Okay, and what they used? Vacuum tubes. And they used magnetic drum for the memory. Actually, what is the technology? Vacuum tubes. what they used as a memory? Magnetic drum. Okay, magnetic drum was used as a memory. Punched cards used as an input. Magnetic tapes used as an output. Understood? And what language they used? Machine language. These are the key points. They are very, very important. The period was 1946 to 1959. First generation. The technology, vacuum tubes. Storage, magnetic drum. Input, punched cards. Output, magnetic tape. And what language they used to process the data? What language they used? Machine language. Machine language is directly translated, means that directly understood by the system. It's no need of further translation. Understood? So these are the key points. You take screenshot of this. Now we'll discuss about the advantages of first generation. What advantages we have? In the first generation, what advantages we have is, we have only the limited number of advantages. First advantage is, in the first generation, the technology was vacuum tubes. Okay, as already explained. But those days, vacuum tubes were only the technology, available technology. Okay, so the using of vacuum tube is one of the advantage, because those days only the vacuum tubes were available, and using that only they designed the system. They used the vacuum tube as a technology. The second one, they used machine language. They used machine language because the computer will understand only the machine language. No need to translate. If you are using any other language like C, C++, Java, again that should be converted to the machine language. But in the first generation, directly they use the machine language. So it doesn't need a further translation. So that is also one of the advantage. And third one is, it is used to perform calculations in milliseconds. Okay, it is used to perform calculations milliseconds. Understood? So these are the advantages we have. We have advantages limited. A few advantages we have, a more number of disadvantages we have. Okay. Now come to the disadvantages. You take advantages. Just you take a screenshot. In the notes you have to write this. Okay. For each and every generation you have to write what is the generation, period of the generation, technology, input, output, memory, what language they used, and what advantages they have. Next, what disadvantages they have. Here only I will tell you the disadvantages. You see, disadvantages. What disadvantages we have is, in order to design one computer system, they need thousands of vacuum tubes. Thousands of vacuum tubes and thousands of them. Those days, the size of the computer is very big. Okay, the size of the computer is very big, and it is equals to, nearly it is equals to 30 tons. How many tons? 30 tons. Okay, first one is, they are used thousands of vacuum tubes. The size of the computer is very big, which is nearby 13 tons. If they are using thousands of vacuum tubes, then what happened? It generates more heat. Okay, it generates more heat because they are using thousands of vacuum tubes. So obviously it will generate more heat. Next, fourth one. If that generation vacuum tubes are it's generating more heat, then it required cooling system. Cooling system. So if it required cooling system means it required AC, and it required constant maintenance. Every time, if any damage is there, any technical failure is there, again they have to change this, and they have to change the vacuum tubes. Okay, every time they need to change that bulbs. That is also disadvantages. First you take this disadvantages, I will give more disadvantages I will give. Well, the next disadvantage. Next, it is very expensive. Very expensive, as I already explained. Only the big organizations can afford it. Okay, and it is very less efficient. Less efficient. Okay, and every time it is used to manipulate the data, and it is a very limited storage. It has very limited storage. Okay, we have number of disadvantages here. That many you no need. Just you write 6 to 7 you write. Understood? Disadvantages. It need thousands of vacuum tubes. It needs thousands of vacuum tubes in order to design a one system. Okay. The next size of the vacuum tubes vary. The size of the one system. The size of on those days, the size of one system is nearby 30 tons. Okay. Next, if they are using more vacuum tubes, then what happens? It generates more heat. If it is generating more heat, it requires a cooling system. Means it needs a AC. Next, it required a constant maintenance. Every time, if one bulb fails, again that bulb should be replaced. So that is why it required a constant maintenance. Okay. Next, it is very expensive because they are using thousands of vacuum tubes. Next, it is a less efficient. Last one, it has very limited storage because they are using only magnetic drum. The size of the magnetic drum was very less. Okay. So actually, how it will be is one in the first generation of computer, one system is equals to one room. Okay. Understand? Because thousands, 30 tons, it's nearby, it is equals to one room. The size of the system was very big in the first generation of computers. So whatever disadvantages you have in the first generation of computers, few disadvantages solved in the second generation. Okay, that we'll discuss now. Come to the second generation computers. The second generation computers, the period was 1959 to 1965. Okay, so 1959 to 1965. What technology they used? Transistors. Okay, what technology they used? Transistors. But in the first generation computer, what technology they used? Vacuum tubes. Okay, one transistor equals to thousands of vacuum tubes. Okay, not thousands, hundreds of vacuum tubes. Now, computers becomes very smaller because in the first generation, hundreds of bulbs equals to, in the first generation they used vacuum tubes. The second generation they used transistor. One transistor equals to nearby 100, 200 vacuum tubes. Then what happened? It is decreasing the size. So when it is decreasing the size, the cost is also less and it is providing a motor. Means performing the calculations very fastly. Next, magnetic core as a primary memory. Magnetic core as a primary memory. Means what primary memory they used is magnetic core. Magnetic core as a primary memory. Means in the second generation computer, primary memory is introduced and magnetic disk is used as a secondary memory. Say example, in your mobile you have an internal memory and SD card. SD card is a secondary. Internal is a primary. So in the second generation computers, they used magnetic core as a primary and the magnetic disk is also secondary. Next, in the second generation computer, what programming language they used? Assembly language. It is similar to machine language only, but whatever data, whatever instructions you have written, again that should be converted, that should be translated, it should be translated into the machine language because the machine language, the system will understand only the machine language. Okay, so in the second generation computer they used assembly language. Again, that assembly language should be converted into the machine language. Why we should convert? Because the system will understand only the machine language. Next, what operating system they used? Batch processing they used. Means a set of instructions are processed at a time. Next, what input device they used? Punch cards. Understood? So you need to compare the first generation and the second generation. First generation in the second generation computers. These are the characteristics of the second generation computers. The period, only thing is you need to remember the technology. In the first generation they used vacuum tubes, in the second generation they used transistors. In the first generation word they used magnetic drum for the storage. In the second generation they used magnetic tape for storage. And in the first generation and the second generation, both the generations used punch cards as an input device. Okay, and in the first generation they used machine language. In the second generation they used assembly language. Understood? So in the second generation we have advantages. At the same time we have some disadvantages. So first we will discuss about the advantages, and the second one is, next we will discuss about the disadvantages. First, what advantages you have? Here they used transistors. Transistors they used. Okay, transistors. As I already said, transistors, one transistor size equals to hundreds of vacuum tubes. So what happened? They used transistors. That is why the size of the computers is decreased. Means it is a small. Now come to the second one. Second advantage is less energy. Less energy. Next they used assembly language. Assembly language. So low cost. Next low heat. Less maintenance. Calculates in microseconds. Is portability. Okay, so here these are the advantages. In the second generation, what they used? Transistors. As I already said, one transistor equals to hundreds of vacuum tubes. So what it is doing? It is decreasing the size of your system. The next one is a less energy. However, you are using a less vacuum tubes. Okay, because vacuum tubes are replaced with the transistors. So it generated less heat. And what language they used? Assembly language. Assembly language is very user friendly compared to the machine language. In the assembly language we have only zeros. In the machine language we have only 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 like this. This whatever you enter, that should be converted into the machine language. But this assembly language is similar to your English language. Like if you want to add two numbers, then A 10, B 20, move A, move like this. Move 10 to A, move 20 to B. Next add A comma B. It means this is simple instructions if you want to perform sum of two numbers. Okay, so it is also called as a coding language. Assembly language is a coding language. Whatever instructions you want to give, that will give in the form of codes. Okay, the next one is a low cost, because we are not taking that many vacuum tubes. So obviously the size of the cost of the system will come down. Low cost. Next, we are using a less number of vacuum tubes, and because we use a transistor, we need only the limited number of transistors. So they used to generate less heat. Next, less maintenance. Only example, transistor failure is very less compared to the vacuum tubes. So that is why it required only the less maintenance. The next one is a microseconds. In the first generation, the computers used to perform calculations in milliseconds. But here the computers are used to perform calculations in microseconds. portability. So compared to the first generation of computers, first generation of computer, the size of the computer was one room. But here the size of the computer is very small compared to the first generation of computers. So easily you can move from one place to another place. So one of the advantages of the second generation computer was portability. You can move. Now we'll discuss about disadvantages. So the disadvantage is what we have here. Here also we need a cooling system. Because transistors are also used to generate heat, but which is less compared to the vacuum tubes. And it is used for only the specific purpose. It is not for a general purpose. Okay. So here also if any transistor is failed, that has to be repaired. So that also constant maintenance was required, not constant, maintenance was required. And storage is also less compared to the third and fourth generation computers, but later we'll discuss that. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of computer. Here we have one more disadvantage, because in the second generation they used assembly language. So in order to perform any calculations, again assembly language data should be converted into the machine language. So it needs a translation. Understood? So this is about your first generation and second generation computers. You need to compare these two. In the exam sometimes they may ask compare the different generations. They may give first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. So they will give different generations. You should have a clarity. What was the period? What technology used? What input devices used? What output devices used? What language they used? Okay, what is the size of the first generation and second generation? Portability was there or not? That you have a clarity. Then only you can compare these two generations, because next you have third and fourth generation, fifth generation also. That we'll discuss in the next class. Okay, you go through this and you take screenshot of this advantages and disadvantages.